Hi everyone, this is Kshitij, and on this channel we talk about robotics, research, and academia. In today's lecture, we are discussing some research challenges that early stage researchers typically face in academia and how to navigate through them, basically discussing some common issues and solutions. So this is the outline of the presentation for the day. We're going to look over some common research challenges, such as literature review challenges, experimental setbacks, financial challenges, collaboration and networking challenges, mental health challenges, and then I'll share a brief case study overlooking some of my own personal experiences and how I tackled through these challenges myself and some key takeaways. So first things first, what are the typical challenges that early stage researchers face when they are going through the early days of their research? So these involve challenges such as literature review challenges, time constraints, lack of infrastructure, not having everything that they need to conduct the experiments, or if they are able to conduct the experiments, there are some experimental setbacks. The results might not be what they expected, some problems with collaborations and networking, and some financial challenges as well. So let's look at each of these things in a bit more detail. So, what are some of the literature review challenges? So, what do I mean by this? So, basically, these are things such as information overload with time, mismanagement of notes, like you scribble something on a piece of paper, then you lose it somewhere, you put it somewhere, you can't look things up, not knowing when to stop the literature review, like you keep on reading and reading and reading a whole lot, and it feels like you're doing something, but you're not very satisfied because you're not implementing anything. You're just reading a whole lot. So it starts to frustrate early stage researchers, not knowing when have they read enough, when can they stop the literature review exercise and start implementing things. So the solution for something like this, and I've built a previous video as well where I've shared a Notion template, and if you missed out, you can find it through my website, through my newsletter, or I'll also put the link to the video in the I button above, where I use a tool called Notion to build a digital literature review database that you can add filters, you could query, you could look things up, but you could easily translate that to any other tool of your choice, such as Excel spreadsheets or Google Sheets and so on and so forth. So having a literature review database like this basically helps you to read aggressively, but also take notes such that you can query things as you read more and more. Things can easily get out of hand. One mistake I made back when I was a PhD scholar myself was I do have photographic memory, so I was basically scribbling notes on every paper and I was stackpiling them, categorizing them, and I know where to look up things, but it was a little bit slow. So when my advisor came up to me and he had a quick question, then I had to remember at all times where that paper was, where I wrote that note. I was good with this kind of management, so I did it offline. But over the years, I learned that digital bookkeeping or digital note keeping is more advanced now. So that's why I built and shared this Notion template for everybody else. Another challenge when it comes to doing literature review is, not knowing where to find the recent research papers and what does the state of the art look like, because papers get published every now and then, but none of them would have the word state of the art in front of it to help you classify that, okay, this is the state of the art, this is now outdated. So you have to come up with your own filters and metrics to identify which work still qualifies as the state of the art, which have gone out of circulation. So for this, you can utilize academic databases and search engines, connect with your peers and ask them like, okay, what's the latest in the field? While you're looking up the academic databases and search engines for recent papers, and I have a video on this on how to utilize these tools and how and where to find the recent research papers. I'll put the link in the I button above. While you're doing this, also learn how to filter them out. So probably the papers that have been published in the last 5 to 7 years are still considered state of the art, unless there is a very recent paper that has made significant improvement in the results shown in the erstwhile state of the art. So they displace the state of the art every once in a while. And another thing that you could do if you don't have time to look up these databases and search engines is to subscribe to digest. What I mean by this is, for example, tools like Archive that I cover in the video on how to find recent research papers. They give out digests that you could have either land in your inbox weekly, daily, or whatever frequency they have available. And accordingly, you can, just do a quick scan through on that the day when it comes in your mailbox, and then you'll know what's happening. You can set filters for keywords and so on and so forth. So it comes directly to your mailbox. You don't have to go looking for papers. Another important challenge that comes up when literature review or just reading in general as a researcher is procrastination. There's a lot of distractions happening, some social gathering, some friend of yours is inviting you for a dinner or a night out, perhaps. There are a lot of interruptions. Workload gets overwhelming because this is not a 9 to 5 job. Things come when they come. Sometimes it might feel like things are falling out of the sky. There's a lack of clear prioritization, like what needs to get done when, why is everything so fluid, and there's difficulty in setting deadlines because of all of this. I've already made a video on how to manage time and procrastination for early stage researchers, but the key takeaway from that video is basically divide and conquer. You need to break down your tasks into smaller, manageable tasks and assign milestones to them so that you can track your own progress internally. Like you have nothing, no rubric to compare it against with, but at least you can set your own milestones and track your progress that way. You could use some productivity tools, and you can even seek accountability partners in the form of mentors and peers so that you can hold each other accountable, or even if it's a one way, like your mentor can hold you accountable, and you have weekly or periodic check-ins so you can see how you're doing in terms of progress and you're not wasting time that way. And when people are reading manuscripts, I've seen this happen time and time over again. Students are easily distracted by the level of detail in the manuscript. And what I mean by that is, students don't read paper effectively and efficiently. Basically, there is a process that I've come up with over the years that helps you skim through the paper so that in the early days you are scanning lots of papers at the same time, but not doing a technical deep dive into each of the manuscripts every time you stumble upon a new manuscript, because that slows you down. There's a certain point in your literature review journey where you start to do a deep dive, which I explain in the video, things to look for when reading scientific papers. And I've written about it in my blogs and newsletters. But if you keep doing a deep dive every time, there will be difficulty in covering both breadth and depth of the domain that you're involved in. So gather key insights quickly. Initially, focus on reading more and going deeper less, and later you'll switch gears. Now, that was that about the literature review challenges, but there would also be experimental setbacks. What I mean by that is, experiments either completely failing or might be yielding inconclusive results. There would be frustration and potential setbacks in terms of research progress because your experiments are not giving the results to back up your hypothesis. There might be some difficulty in troubleshooting and identifying the root cause why the experiment either failed or yielded inconclusive results. So, in order to tackle these kind of things, is first of all, you need to embrace failures as a part of the research process. Like everybody fails. I have burned sensors myself. I've burned my own fingers. I've kind of hit roadblocks every once in a while, which is kind of normal. But when that happens, you should always go back to the very beginning of how the process started and start doing the process of elimination to troubleshoot experimental setups and figure out whether it was your experiment setup that was a problem, whether it was something else that might have caused it to fail, and then try and repeat the same process by tweaking just one knob at a time is essentially how you troubleshoot it. If you start tweaking multiple knobs at the same time, you would never know what caused the thing to fail, right? You can also ask your peers and mentors for insights. Like now in robotics, I have a whole lot of experience, and when somebody comes to me with a particular problem, I can already kind of figure out where the problem stems from and already give them few avenues where they could go look for some issues and troubleshoot. And 9 out of 10 times they always find that issue, but there are also certain chances where the issue comes from somewhere else, and then you have to go look under the hood, and then you iterate and adapt. So once you know where the things are going wrong, you can kind of fix and tweak those knobs, and then you start to standardize your process. So hopefully the experiments don't keep failing over and over, and then you get the results that you intend to support your hypothesis. One thing that is often less talked about, but is again a bigger challenge in academia, is the financial challenges. Limited funding in research basically puts a lot of stress on the research groups. There's limited resources. Experimental equipment and materials are often high cost, and personal finances are also strained. Stipends are not very super fancy in academia, and everybody knows that. The solution for something like this, in terms of personal finance, first of all, is budgeting your own finances and keeping your expenses to a bare minimum. You cannot live a lavish life, but you can always, get by if you are very strong in terms of budgeting and financial planning. Nothing super fancy, but just sit down, figure out what your stipend is and what is a must spend and what you can save away from it, and just try to kind of build up on top of that. And you can one thing that I started doing myself was to collaborate with other professors spread around the globe, so that I could share resources and reduce the project cost, so that I don't have to set up facilities every time at my own end. Somebody else might already have those. There might be logistical challenges to how you would get access to those facilities, but at least start talking to these people and then work out a way. If you kind of go looking for a solution, you'll eventually find one. Where there's a will, there's always a way, right? And you can always seek additional grants, both internal from your own university where you're affiliated in. There might be departmental funding, there might be some seed funding coming up, or there might be external funding agencies that might be funding for a particular equipment or resource that you're on the market for. So you can always apply for that funds, and once you get it, you can acquire it. In the meantime, look for peers that can, lend you the resources so they can keep going. One more thing that early stage researchers struggle with is collaboration and communication. So I've worked with distributed teams for nearly 15 years. Most of my collaborations had been international, across multiple time zones. I've worked with peers at the same level as me, peers that were senior to me, and even professors, like all the way from assistant to distinguished professors around the globe from top tier universities, right? Oftentimes the problem that comes is, forming a team, managing a team, communicating what the team needs to deliver and what the deliverables actually look like, because there's no written contract. You can't tell somebody that there was a breach of contract because they didn't do X. The thing is, this is all based on mutual understanding. So working with distributed collaborators across different time zones already is a tricky business, and then there might be people that might not deliver 100% of what you ask for. So over the years, I started looking for project management tools, and I found things like Notion or Trello to be two free tools that are often very useful. So you could do project management that way. You could build Kanban boards. When somebody's not delivering something or slacking off, you can always tell them, "Hey, look, you were supposed to deliver this. It's not happening." So if it's your collaboration, you have to not only take the lead in terms of implementing what you are in charge of, but also managing the rest of the team as well. Of course, you have to be a little bit careful and more polite when it comes to reminding professors, because they have 1,000 different responsibilities. But at least a tool like this helps you manage the project through and through. You have to establish communication protocols. Like, people need to know how you're supposed to ping each other for quick queries. Is it going to be emails always, or WhatsApp, or Discords, or Slack, or whatever is your communication protocol for quick messages or long messages, weekly meetings, monthly check-ins, whatever is going to happen? You, as somebody who's establishing this collaboration, needs to lay it out clearly and outline the deliverables very, very clearly, what each member needs to do. Now, as to finding how to build a network and how to reach out to people, I have several videos on my YouTube channel already. I'll link one of them on how to build a network. And you can also read through my blogs where I explain, how you can prepare when you're going to conferences to start growing your network, how you could do cold outreach to professors, and so on and so forth. So there's ample resources both on my channel here and on my blogs. And last but not the least, mental health and well-being challenges. So mental health often takes a backseat in academia because, as I said, this is not a 9 to 5 job. And once you're stuck with a problem in your head, your brain typically does not shut off. It wants to keep churning and churning. So even when you lie down to sleep, your brain is still working. And then you get up in the middle of the night, you start thinking, why is there this problem not being fixed? So your mental health starts to take a beating, which eventually starts showing up on your physical health and your overall well being. There's a lot of academic pressure, especially the fear of the unknown, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's a lot of financial kind of stress that stems up. There's no hard and fast deadlines that you can keep track of. Everything is internally managed, which impacts your research productivity, right? So I've already talked about how you can work out your mental health and wellness in terms of, adopting hobbies, going out for a walk, spending time with friends outside the workplace, prioritizing self-care and work-life balance, and establishing a research environment that works for you. So just because some other person is working through the night and sleeping through the day does not mean you have to do the same thing. You can come up with a system that works for you, right? But do not underplay mental health and well-being, because if that starts to take a beating, your physical health will go down, and eventually your productivity will suffer quite a bit. So here's a little bit of a case study of how I tackled some of these challenges myself, right? So as I said, I've established distributed collaborations for the last 15 years, several different top tier universities. I've published with them as well. So two things that I did clearly was I clearly communicated what I bring to the table and what I need from them. So everybody had clear expectations of what needs to be done to get this going, and I was very clear with how I'm going to delegate the stuff. So when I say something is going to be done by me and something is going to be done by you, the demarcation of the projects and deliverables was crystal clear. Not so much in the beginning, but over the years, I learned how to make that demarcation clear. There might be bureaucratic delays at times. So, for example, when I was looking for an outdoor robot to do some experiments with in the field, as a field roboticist, having a sturdy robot was important to me. But there were a lot of bureaucratic hassles, and it was delaying my timeline because I had to wait several months to even get the clock ticking, right? So essentially, what I did was I purchased some COTS components myself and I assembled everything myself. So there's always keep a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. And just because you have that does not mean you don't trust plan A. It's just that you don't trust the external factors that are beyond your control. And things when they go south, you are ready to, deploy another alternate plan so that you can keep going and you're not sitting and scratching your head when things go south. Um, there were times where I got inconclusive results, especially when I was dealing with human participants. Sometimes they give very convoluted answers where statistically proving their significance was a bit tricky and so on. So I sat down with mentors, I sat down myself with the whiteboard, and then I came up with explanations and justifications of why that was the case, why it was inconclusive. Not only that, I also made an effort to explain what impact did that result have on the overall experiment setup, because that wasn't the only result I had. I had a whole lot more results to back up my hypothesis, but this set of inconclusive results also revealed something. So I talked about those, and the reviewers appreciated something like that, and they said, okay, in the future you could do blah blah blah, and then it was accepted. So make an effort to not hide inconclusive results, but come up with reasonable justifications and what could be done to change them in the future or to make them conclusive or whatever is that impact on your experiment setting. As for mental wellness, I adopted a whole lot of hobbies. So I do martial arts, I do go out for walks, I spend time in nature, I love to cook. So whatever was possible given the local resources, I kept adopting those kind of hobbies and always was creatively involved outside of workplace as well. And that allowed me to even make some friends outside of workplace. So, there's like a whole lot of things that you could do there and refresh and unwind. Literature reviews challenges, as I said. So initially, I started out by scribbling notes on manuscripts. I used to print everything out, scribble notes, highlight stuff, and eventually, I started building templates and SOPs that helped me kind of streamline the processes and switch from more offline to online processes. Project management initially was a whole lot of back and forth by emails, but eventually I switched to Kanban boards. So as I said, Notion and Trello, you can use one or the other. But I built like an entire Notion dashboard, so I stuck to Notion. So everything was done via Notion, and then those Kanban boards was like different checkpoints, different stages of each of the members of the team, how the project was progressing, and so on and so forth. So the Kanban board was a very nice overview of the entire research progress. So that was pretty helpful. So the key takeaways of this short lecture today is basically if you have literature review management issues, create a digital database. If you have time management challenges, look for productivity tools. If you want to read effectively, you want to prioritize breadth before depth so that you can focus on reading more and then going deeper afterwards once you're sure that you have covered the entire spectrum already. Um, if you have experimental setbacks, iteratively troubleshoot and collaborate and reduce the risk of having the experiment completely fail the next time. Seek expert advice and practical wisdom from your mentors and peers. If you have collaboration challenges, again, project management tools are your best buddies, and then be very clear of what you bring to the table and what you expect from the member of the team or your collaborator to bring to the table for the project to be a success. And define success. Like, don't just say, oh, if I write 2 lines of code, you write two lines of code, it will be success. No, define success in terms of an end goal. For example, a certain manuscript in a certain conference paper is an end goal. So make sure your project gets there and it's clearly communicated. And of course, prioritize mental health for sustained research productivity, because if your productivity goes down, the progress slows down and it adds to frustration and anxiety, and a whole bunch of stuff happens. So make sure you're giving heed to mental health as well. Then, if you need further support, you can always connect with your peers and learn from them. Practical wisdom is something, there is no like golden rule of thumb, but it comes from experience. So always stay connected with your peers. Reach out to your mentors, seniors in your field. Connect with postdocs and professors for feedback for your work that you're doing, and share updates on social media and gather preliminary feedback, so that if there is some work that you're doing and you don't know how it is going, you can always gather some feedback from the community. There's open source community everywhere, so you can seek advice and see what they have to say about the work that you're doing. Thank you so much for listening, and see you again the next time. And we'll be talking more about some more expert tips and tricks on how you can navigate academia. Until then, be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and see you again in the next lecture.